What's up, guys? We are back. It's Drew. If addiction recovery is your thing, you found this channel, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for checking it out. We got another episode right now. We got Ryan Lee. Now, Ryan Lee started off experimenting like a lot of us do, ended up running into ecstasy. Then he found meth, which eventually led him into the hospital. He got out and he decided to turn his life around. Now he has years sober, and he ended up turning down a $300K a year tech job to follow his dream, start his own business, which is Capsule Adventures, which is a sober traveling company. So this is Ryan's story. Thank you guys for checking it out. Thank you for supporting the page. Hope you enjoy the episode. Let's go. What's going on, guys? We are back. It's Drew from the Sober Fix podcast. Always love having a guest on here, and we've got Ryan Lee. Ryan is sober. I'm going to have him tell some of his story. He also has a badass company, sober traveling company called Capsule Adventures. I was just asking him a little bit about that. Ryan, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing good, Drew. How are you?
I am doing good, and I remember getting your email, and I checked out your website. It was all cool stuff, just a great idea, great concept. I was going to ask you, where are you from? I know you're in Bali right now. Where were you from originally?
I grew up in North Carolina, went to school there, all that good stuff. Big UNC Tar Heel fan. Um, and then I moved to New York City in like 2016. And then since like 2022, I've been traveling full time as like one of those digital nomads. So just traveling with a laptop, working, living from wherever I am.
That's cool, man. When did you start? Was that the first thing you started? I know for me, I started drinking kind of heavily around 17. I know there's a lot of people that kind of started earlier. When did alcohol enter the picture for you?
I'd say it entered the picture like in a big way, probably when I was 16, because I did like an exchange program in Germany and you could drink at 16 there, really probably earlier, but I remember like spending just like an entire month drunk in Germany. And then coming back to the States and trying to continue. It was a little tougher with my parents to drink that often, but yeah, it definitely started a little bit early, and then continued into college, and then gradually, escalated to cocaine, ecstasy, all that good stuff when I moved to New York City.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I have family in England, and we would go visit them every, I'd say, like 4 or 5 years. I haven't been in a while now. The last time I was there, I actually turned 18 there. And that was right after I'd kind of started to experiment with, marijuana, started to drink, started to do the pills here and there. Ecstasy, same thing.
Uh-huh.
And I remember going over there, and I was 18 years old. And of course, in the US, I couldn't drink. I didn't have a fake ID. It wasn't as easy. We still found ways when we were in high school, but I was
Sure.
shocked on that trip because I had just turned 18 and I was able to order drinks anywhere. Like they did. It was just just a different culture, man. Did you experience that as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like their culture around drinking, it's like not as, I guess, taboo or like this, thing to look forward to, when you turn 21. Um, So I guess they were not going as crazy as the Americans were going, during this month in Germany. They had maybe a more chill approach to drinking, than we did. But yeah, I think like the forbidden fruit for us, all of a sudden being able to drink 5 years sooner than we would be in the U.S. And then it just being kind of like super casual there, like no one's carding anyone. If you look like you're roughly 15, 16, it's fine. Yeah, it's just a different culture.
Yeah, it was just, I was shocked, and I remember people looking at me like, dude, what's the big deal? We've been drinking here for years, and they were
Yeah.
18. I want to
Yeah.
ask you about ecstasy. I don't get to talk to a lot of people about ecstasy on the show. I remember the first time I tried it, though, a friend of mine said, "Hey, you got to check this out." It was a green pill, so it didn't look too scary. It had a
Yep.
Macintosh kind of, or it was either Macintosh or Apple sign in it, and I remember taking it. It was during the day, and man, what a crazy feeling! Can you tell me about your first? How'd you end up trying ecstasy for the first time?
You know, I think I guess my graduation to like harder drugs really came when I moved to New York City. I moved to New York to be with my boyfriend at the time. And he introduced me to ecstasy. You know, I really started doing cocaine with him and his friends. But ecstasy, I'd say was really the harder drug that made me think, I like this. It made me just like nicer, made me like love everyone I was around. It obviously, I felt really high, felt great, but it felt like, I don't know, I was like more connected to people. Um, and with ecstasy, like you really can't do it like super often and get those same effects. But I definitely tried. So I went from really only drinking and maybe smoking weed occasionally to trying to do ecstasy like a few times a week, within like, a month of doing it for the first time. Because I just love that feeling. It kind of got me outside of myself.
Yeah, I could totally relate to that. It's interesting. I remember hearing people talking about how they used to use it in therapy, and
Mm-hmm.
basically, because the feeling that you get from it, it's like you'll open up to people about anything. And
Yeah.
when I heard that it was in kind of a therapy setting in the past, I remember thinking after I did it, I'm like, wow, they probably got more work done in one session on ecstasy than you would in 12 years of working through
Yep.
someone's trauma or experience. Did you find that with the kind of openness? You're just willing to talk to anyone about anything?
Yeah, and I found that like I guess just like the general love and you know, I guess a softer side of me, like it kind of carried into my life afterwards. Um, like I think before I moved to New York, I was very much like I did not like a lot of like physical touch. Like I was very like sarcastic, never earnest. I'm still not super earnest, but I think like the ecstasy really opened me up a bit. Obviously, while I was high, but then there was kind of remnants that carried on afterwards because I think it does do something to your brain, or maybe you decide you like that feeling and you kind of remember it afterwards. Um, so, I mean, I'd say ecstasy was like it was good and bad because I was like, wow, drugs can actually be like a benefit to my life. But ultimately, I would say it led me to a more darker spiral with things like cocaine, ultimately meth, and then just having, an unhealthy way of doing things, like just doing drugs until I passed out, essentially.
Yeah, I remember too. Those come downs off ecstasy were no joke. I mean, I would feel. Oh, and you mentioned kind of doing it a couple times a week. I remember when my addiction really took off. It was high school. Ecstasy was one of the first things, hard drugs that I tried, and I
Mm-hmm.
literally remember overdoing it, and all of a sudden I'm popping one a couple times a week on a school night, and then
Yeah.
the rest of the week I'm just so down and depressed, but I couldn't stop. I just love the feeling, and it was the same thing for me. It was kind of my gateway drug. I enjoyed it, and I liked the experience, and after doing it, it was kind of for me was I'm like, well, I've already done a hard drug now, so maybe I could try something else. So for me, it was
Mm-hmm.
the same thing. I ended up I started doing the cocaine, and what was that experience like for you? The cocaine as you kind of started to progress.
I mean, I think cocaine was like, at first, it was similar to ecstasy. Like, I felt like I was having amazing conversations with people. It was helping me, not be so, not shy, but not being so like standoffish to strangers. Like, all of a sudden, I was like very interested in talking to everyone and was kind of full of self-confidence. And, I'd say the first like handful of times I did cocaine, it was like a very positive experience. Like I was having a lot of fun, having great conversations. Was maybe a little bit like tweaky, but um, it was great at first, as a lot of these things are. Like you then spend the following years trying to just chase what it felt like the first few times. I mean, that's the same thing with, I think, everything, like with ecstasy, with cocaine, with meth, even with drinking. You keep drinking to kind of chase that initial great buzz feeling you get at the start. Um, but I'd say cocaine was like a dirtier ecstasy experience, because it wasn't as necessarily loving. You could definitely go the other way and become like very aggressive. Things felt maybe a little shallower. You didn't feel that love afterwards. You just felt like horseshit. Um, but yeah, I'd say cocaine for me was like pretty sporadic at the beginning. And then it just ultimately became something I couldn't stop doing, even though if you asked me if I liked cocaine, I would say I fucking hated it.
Yeah, it was the same way. Every time, especially with cocaine,
Mm-hmm.
I'd have maybe a fun night, and then it would get to the point where I had already kind of woken up the monster, and so now I'm going to get more. And I told myself, "Oh, I'm only going
Mm-hmm.
to do this bag," and now I'm calling people at like 3 a.m. and making sketchy drives and trips to continue on the night. And by the time I finally fall asleep after coming down the next day, oh, I would have headaches. I remember a few
Yeah.
times standing up and just blood just pouring down as I woke up, and
Yeah.
just a massive headache. I felt like I had holes in my brain. And I used to
No.
swear, I'd
Yeah.
say, you know what? This is it. Never again with the cocaine. And then a few more days would go by, and then it would be Friday, and maybe I'd get some money in my pocket or whatever, and someone would say, "Hey, let's go out and drink, and let's get a bag of Coke." And I would just do it. I'd just say, "Yeah, let's go." And then I'd just repeat the cycle over and over
Yeah.
again. But when did you realize everything was kind of getting out of control? Was it a certain period in your life? Was it kind of a combination of everything? Was it like a relationship that you had with someone where they said something? Where do you
Yeah.
think kind of a problem was starting to surface on your radar?
Well, it's funny because there's been a number of, I'd say, like checkpoints or gates that I went through where I was like, I may be doing this too much. I had that experience with ecstasy in like 2017, where I was like, I had just broken up with the guy I moved to New York for. I had gone on like this international trip where I was doing like so many drugs. And then at the end of that, I was like, I need to stop ecstasy. And I did. Um, but then as these things go, just by increments, you start using more and more and more, and things kind of come back into the mix. But it really wasn't until like the pandemic that things really escalated for me. Um, and coming out of the pandemic, I remember like going to Tulum, like New Year's coming into 2021, and just there was like halfway through the trip, me just being like, this has gotten out of control. Like, I have to make a change. I have to stop, this excessive amount of drug use. Um, so rather than after New Year's, rather than spending the rest of winter in New York City, I had the great idea of renting an Airbnb in New Orleans for 3 months because it wouldn't be so cold. I didn't really know many people there in New Orleans, had no drug connects. So that was kind of my way to do fewer drugs, was to go to New Orleans for a few months. Um, but that turned out to be a very bad idea. One of the first people I met was like a meth and heroin dealer. We almost immediately did meth together. He left some behind after he left, which I then spent the next few days doing. Then when I was out, I asked him for more. And then that started like a 23-day meth bender for me that ended up me like going to the hospital, but then ultimately getting sober. So, in a roundabout way, me going to New Orleans to stop doing drugs as much did end up me stop doing drugs totally at the end of it.
Wow, that is interesting. And was that the first time that you had tried meth, or had you tried it before?
I had tried it like a couple times over like the preceding like maybe 8 months. I had done it twice. Um, the first time was, I won't say accidental, but I was so fucked up that I didn't even realize what I was doing until it had hit me. Um, and then the second time was just kind of another weird one-off situation, but had never gone on like this type of bender like I did in New Orleans, where it was all day, every day for I think it was like 22 or 23 days.
Wow. And did you get much sleep during that time?
I think I slept like once every 2 or 3 days for a few hours, if you could call it sleep. It was one of those things where like you wake up and you're like, I could have just been dead. Like you switch off and then switch back on essentially. Like you have no concept of what just happened or time passing, certainly no dreams. Um, but yeah, I would just collapse every few days.
Yeah, that stuff it gets scary sometimes too. I remember I just couldn't put the stuff down. Even when
No.
it would get to the point where I almost felt like I wasn't even feeling it that much
Mhm.
anymore. But it was just something about, I don't know if it was the ritual of smoking it, or snorting it, or just this idea that I want to keep trying to get high. But I was the same way with that stuff. I would have these binges, and I remember the last time I did it, I ended up getting psychosis. I was hearing stuff, I
Hmm.
was seeing stuff. It got pretty creepy at the end. I remember
Yeah.
I remember telling people like I'm seeing like a layer of evil in this world that I wonder if it's always there, or if it's just this
Like
meth,
the
because I
shadow
was
people
just,
that like run across your
yeah.
vision. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was seeing shadow people, and I was,
Yeah.
oh man, I was dropping weight, and I wasn't eating anything. And you said you
Yeah.
went to the hospital at the end of that. Was that from the meth, or was it not eating, or what do you think caused that?
I think it was ultimately just like a panic attack because, like, I don't know how graphic we want to get on this podcast, but like the night before, I had had like a, I'll call it a sex party at my house with tons of people there, tons of drugs going on. Like I had probably done like 6 different drugs that night. And so the next day, it was actually my sister's birthday. I just felt so bad. And like I got it in my brain that I was maybe having a heart attack. And so, of course, I'm Googling the symptoms of a heart attack. And as I'm reading the symptoms, I'm manifesting those symptoms now. So I'm convinced that I'm going to die at any second, but I'm also like too embarrassed and too paranoid to call 911 on myself. So I go back and forth internally for a few hours. Like, do I die alone in this Airbnb with like $500 worth of drugs all around me? Or do I maybe just call 911 to go to the hospital and not die and suffer the embarrassment of maybe the paramedics and the doctor? So I ultimately called 911. Um, Went to the hospital for a few hours. There was nothing wrong with my heart, probably just a panic attack. But then the doctor, who knew what I'd been doing, I was very open about what I've been doing. He came in finally and was like, you know, your heart's fine. Just don't push yourself so hard next time, man. And that
Oh,
was,
interesting.
and
Yeah.
then they sent me out the door. So I was like, damn, it's there's no one, there's no one here gonna save you or help you. Um, which I guess was the best and worst thing he could have said to me. It worked out for me because I ultimately kind of just realized I had to like take control of this and leave New Orleans, make a change, do something. But there wasn't going to be someone magically coming to save me and snap me out of this pattern.
Yeah, and how did you start to make that change towards sobriety? How did you once you mentally decided, look, I need to do something about this, how did you kind of start to put action to that?
Well, I mean, the first thing I did was I called some friends that I really trusted, and just let them know what was going on. Um, I was so just like broken from the bender I'd been on that I couldn't even like physically pack up my stuff and leave New Orleans for like 2 days. So I kind of suffered this like psychosis come down where I was having horrible auditory and visual hallucinations. Unfortunately, around the same time, there was a lot of like partying going on in the neighborhood I was in, a lot of fireworks going off. So I felt like I was in like some type of like war zone horror show for those 2 days. Um, so when I finally gathered the strength to like leave New Orleans, go back to New York City, I contacted my therapist, who I had not been seeing for a couple of years, but who had kind of predicted this drug abuse spiral that I was now in. Um, he was kind enough to like reopen their outpatient rehab program. Had a lot of supportive friends, both in New York City and back in North Carolina and around the U.S. But I let know very soon that I was getting sober. So I had a lot of support systems, a lot of just like peer pressure ultimately to stay sober because I told so many people what I'd been doing. So there's a lot of people that were like, yeah, you need to fucking get sober. You're crazy. Um, but I think also like when you source like, okay, what's the reason for this addictive or abusive, self-abusive behavior? For me, it was ultimately just thrill seeking. Like I just really loved getting high and was kind of bored with my life. And I loved having sex high. It was not a lot of like deeper, darker things I had to unpack. And like my life was pretty great, you know, ultimately. So I think it was once I made that flip in my brain that I have to get sober, like it was pretty easy for me to get sober because I had all these support systems. I had a great outpatient rehab program. I had a meditation coach, a yoga coach, talk therapy, group therapy, the whole bit. Um, but yeah, once I just kind of made that switch that I have to stop, I think that everything was going for me to make that change, you know, pretty, I won't say easy, but pretty moderately easy.
Yeah, and that's great. And something that you said that that I could totally relate to as well is when I first started using drugs, because I hear a lot of times that, look, if you're getting high, like people used to tell me, if you're getting high, like you're getting high, you are running away from some trauma or there is
Uh-huh.
some really deep rooted underlying serious thing wrong with you. And honestly, when I first started, I was just thrill seeking. I was
Yeah.
experimenting. I was having fun. I had solid people in my life. I was
Uh-huh.
going to school at the time. I was doing things for fun. I had some purpose. There really wasn't anything in the beginning that like anything serious I was trying to run away from. I just
Yeah.
started experimenting like a lot of people do, and I loved it. I just loved it. Like some people love to, I don't know, go off to school and get certain accolades, or some people like to BMX or read or whatever it is. I loved doing drugs. Like once I started it, I just loved it. And
Yeah.
I'm glad you say that because I think that sometimes a lot of us who have found ourselves in addiction, we sometimes think that we got to search for this really deep rooted thing that was wrong with us. And sometimes it's
Mhm.
just not there. Sometimes
Yeah.
we just started messing around and it took off. But I like that you mentioned too the support. How crucial is it, do you think, for someone who's turning their life around to have support wherever that comes from, but just to have those solid people they could talk to in their life?
I mean, it's obviously important. Um, and I mean, depending on who you are as a person and how like susceptible you are to, I guess, like peer pressure or whatever the positive version of peer pressure is. Like I knew myself and I knew just the more people that I told that I was going through this and what I've been doing, they might not be thinking about my sobriety whatsoever, but me just knowing that they know that I'm trying to get sober, like for me, I knew that would create enough like social pressure that would just be one more guardrail in my sobriety. So I guess that's kind of like the outer layer of support, just this like implied pressure that I put on myself. But then obviously there's the people in your close circle, maybe those two, three, four, five people that are actively supporting you, that are checking in on you, or you're talking to a lot, or you're calling up when you feel like you're having a crazy craving, or in my case, like people were coming over to my house and like spending the night, like sleeping on my couch or sleeping in the same room with me, because I was still kind of having like these crazy nights where I was like hearing things that weren't there, seeing things that weren't there. Um, but obviously, that support is instrumental for anyone. Um, and I do like this experience has given me a lot of sympathy and empathy for people that really struggle to get sober because they don't have these support systems, right? Like for me, it was like quote unquote easy to get sober because I had the money to go to an outpatient rehab program. I had the savings to like quit my job and focus on getting sober. I had just kind of this thrill seeking reasoning for using drugs, but there's a lot of people that don't have those same, you know, those same set of circumstances. Um, they're living paycheck to paycheck. They have broken family life. They maybe have friends that are like deeper in addiction than they are. So I think it's really important, obviously, to have these tight connections, but to have these connections with people that are, not living your same, abusive lifestyle.
Yeah, and when you were telling me about when you were telling me about kind of the war zone when you were coming off the meth and the fireworks and stuff like that, just for anyone listening, that stuff gets scary. When you start hearing stuff on that, because you think it's real, you really do. I
Yeah.
remember one time I thought it was weird. Anytime I would leave the house, I would hear people like having a conference call, but they were talking about me. Like kind of like, wow, look what he's wearing today, or look how he's walking. And it was so bizarre
It
because
is so
obviously as I
bizarre.
say this, that sounds absolutely insane and just crazy.
Yeah.
But at the time I actually believed it. And I thought that
Yeah.
that people were after me and stuff like that. I
Hmm.
just wanted to throw that in there because as you were talking about kind of coming off that stuff, it totally reminded me of that. I want to ask you, so you get sober, you start changing things. What was early sobriety like for you? How was it kind of those first couple months? How did you get through
Hmm.
those?
I had a very bizarre, like, first 30 days of sobriety. Um, I had like this weird brain thing going on where I was essentially like manic, like fully manic. I think just like the amount of like Xanax I'd been doing and other things in conjunction with the meth just like threw my brain chemistry off. So I had like all of the self confidence and like joy you could want, but in a very like manic way. So like I was like, why didn't I get sober earlier? I feel amazing. But what I didn't realize was that I was pretty manic. I was sleeping like 2 hours a night. I spent, I think, like $18,000 on shoes and clothes and random accessories. Like, so I just went from one addiction to another one. A lot of this stuff I still have because it was non returnable. Um, but like I bought like 23 pairs of the same shoe just in slightly different colors. Like so I went from one addiction to the next. But it got me through the first 30 40 days, which ultimately came out of that mania. They thought I was maybe bipolar, but it was just some weird, one-off reaction. So once I got out of that kind of artificial I feel amazing phase, um, I think I was far enough away from um, you know, day zero that from there it became tougher but pretty manageable. But I didn't have that first like really tough phase where I'm like craving drugs or really struggling. I kind of like, I don't know, I felt amazing, but it was very much just a weird brain chemistry thing. Um, but I think after I came out of that like manic phase, I very quickly realized that I needed to incorporate some type of like movement into my life. So I got really into hiking. I got really into yoga. I was up every morning at like 6 a.m., catching the first rays of the sun, doing stretching, like just doing everything I could to like move my body and be outside and um, just focus on like, yeah, healing my body that had just been kind of like this cooped up gremlin, indoors all the time. Um, but yeah, that was kind of my early days.
Yeah, that's cool. I can relate to that too, kind of finally getting active and finding just a different, I don't know, man. That stuff saved me in the beginning. I feel like
Yeah,
exercise or getting in the sun or
yeah.
listening to music, anything to get the dopamine kind of going again in the beginning, I just felt helped me so much. I want to ask you, were you traveling at this time, or how did you come up with the idea for your company?
I wasn't traveling at this time. I really didn't start traveling until I think like 2 years into sobriety. So I think Drew, you and I have like a pretty close like sober date. Like mine's March 16th, 2020, 2021. No, 2021. I think you're like a year ahead of me. Yeah. Yeah, 2021 is my sober date. So it wasn't until like late 2022 that I started traveling as like a digital nomad. Um, my job was remote, so I I sold all my things and just started traveling full time um, for a couple of years while I was working my tech sales job. Um, but I quit that job and then was just traveling unemployed for a while, and that's when I had the idea to start this sober travel company. Really born out of two back-to-back bad group travel experiences. What were supposed to be these like bucket list group vacations ended up pretty soiled or ruined from just the kind of partying atmosphere. The first one was a 12-day safari where one of the guys in the group was fully relapsing in a horrific way for the entire safari. So I'm on a bus all day with this guy who's drunk as shit, maybe passed out. He doesn't even know like what continent he's on. He's stealing alcohol from people. He's stealing alcohol from the places we're staying. He's like putting himself in danger at night, like leaving the tents that you're like not supposed to leave because there's lions and elephants walking around. Um,
Oh,
it was crazy. He was also like having some kind of like psychotic breakdown. He was posting things online that were obviously not true about how we were going through villages that had been like destroyed by child soldiers, that he'd been bit by snakes. Like it was like this whole crazy drama. And everyone wanted him off the trip, but we also knew that he would die if we kicked him off. Like we're in the middle of nowhere in like Botswana, and he would just probably die. Not because it's like a dangerous place, but he was just so out of his mind, and we're in like essentially the desert. He would probably just like fall in a ditch and you know die ultimately. So we just all had to put up with it for 12 days, but that was a very long 12 days and was supposed to be this amazing safari experience.
oh man, that's a bummer. And
Yeah.
that's cool that you guys kind of realized we want this guy out of here, but in the condition he's in, we're probably just gonna have to deal with this. Was that weird seeing someone? Because I know for me, there's been a couple of experiences I've had since I've got sober. I've got to know some people that got sober as well, and you get to really know them well, and they're good friends, and they end up going out and they end up relapsing, and sometimes it's bizarre because a lot of times I see them do things that I've done in the past, or it kind of reminds me sometimes of where I'm at or where I used
Yeah.
to be at. Was it
Yeah.
like that for you? Is it kind of weird for you to see that? Just kind of knowing with everything you've been through, was it weird, or was it just super annoying because you were trying to enjoy your trip?
I mean, I think it was definitely like there's a certain like I guess triggered would be the word, but I think it's like too close to home. It's beyond annoying. It's just it makes you like want to run away actually. Like there's this weird mirror that's now being held up, or this weird like portal into like this could be you. There's something like very icky about seeing people that are in active addiction, especially with the knowledge that maybe this is actually a relapse. Um, so I get kind of the same feeling when I'm around people. Like, I don't know if you feel the same way, but like, I feel like I kind of just have like this radar for people that are maybe in addiction in some way. Like, I can just sense something from people that I meet sometimes. And I'm like, oh, I have to stay away from this person. Like, there is something within them that is some type of dangerous addiction behavior vibe that I just don't want anything to do with. Like, I'm not the person to help you. Like, I just like want to run away. And maybe that's my own like cowardice or self-protection mechanism, but there's this energy I pick up from people that I just like, I have to get the fuck away from this.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting? I'm kind of thinking as you're talking about that, and I totally get it. And I think almost what it is, or just my guess is, we used to have that radar when, like when you said you moved a different state over and you found the dealer that was doing meth and heroin. You know, it's like we used to
Uh-huh.
have this radar, or at least I did, for finding people that were in addiction. Like I could find a guy, you could send me off to Alaska, and I'll find some dude that's selling dope out of his igloo. And so
Right.
it's like
Yeah.
that radar used to come in handy, but now I see what you're talking about. Now that we're sober, it's almost like we see it now as kind of a protective shield. Hey, be careful, something's going on. Yeah, that was really interesting as you were talking about that. So you had the two bad trips, and did you decide, okay, maybe I can do something about this. Maybe I can get into this traveling thing. How did that kind of concept come to you?
Yeah, so like the second trip, it wasn't as dramatic. There was a lot of alcohol on the first night. One of the guides like kind of forced his way into a girl's room. Like, it wasn't, she just called him like a sex pest. Like, he didn't like assault her or anything, but it was kind of like on the road to an assault. He was quickly kicked off the trip, but it was the start of an 8-day hike. So I had 8 days to kind of think about what had happened on now two back-to-back trips. At the same time, I had just accepted a job, another like tech sales job, that would start essentially at the end of this hike. So through these 8 days of hiking, there's a lot of me just walking and thinking. I just had like this bad feeling within me about taking this job, but I didn't really know what else I would do. Um, And I don't know, the thought just came to me like, well, what if I just do sober versions of these kind of adventurous travel trips that I love so much and make it less of a dice roll for people, like for sober and non sober people to join these trips that are intentionally substance free, that are focused on connecting with the experience, but then also the other people there. I feel like anytime you're united under like a common theme or goal, it immediately makes the group closer and feel like it's less of people just like being solo on a group trip, you know? Because I don't know if you've done group travel trips. Sometimes you're just kind of like to yourself and like there's people around you. Like, you're part of the group, but you're kind of just there because you want to do this experience on your own. Um, but yeah, it was really on that second hiking trip that I had the idea, um, to start this substance free adventure travel company. So once I got back to Signal or Service, I called up the company who I accepted the job with, told them actually never mind, and then yeah, started working on what became Capsule Adventures.
Wow, man, what a cool story. Kind of the idea was kind of solidified as you had some time to kind of walk and process everything.
Uh-huh.
Was that kind of, was it scary saying, "Hey, look, I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to tell that job that's just offered me a position that it's not happening." Were you kind of back and forth about whether you should do it?
Yeah, I mean, it was scary because it's like, I'm giving up, like what is ultimately probably like 300K a year guaranteed,
Wow.
tech sales job versus, you know, me now probably gonna eat up all my savings to start this company. So that was scary. But part of my like sobriety journey, I think, and the reason it took me so long to get sober is because I felt like I was performing in my previous tech sales job. So as long as I was hitting my sales numbers, as long as everyone at work was happy with how I was performing, it really kept me from thinking that I had a drug and alcohol problem. So like work for me was almost like all I was. It was work and drugs. So going back to like a similar tech sales role, that now that I didn't need it as like an anchor to my, sanity or being an okay functioning person in the world, I think it really had shifted something within me that I was like, you know what, this is not going to provide any meaning to my life, and actually might be detrimental to my sobriety to go back to this type of work. So it just didn't sit right within me. And I think like I'm so happy that I had the idea for this company, because going back to like a tech sales role, like it would just been soul sucking. Like there's nothing wrong with tech sales, but for me, like it just not the right move. And I never really thought that I could marry like passion with work. I mean, I've heard people do it, but I just never thought that was in the cards for me. Um, but I'm giving it a shot, and so far it's been pretty great. Um, I have a passion for sobriety. I have a passion for travel. So I'm putting those two things together.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That
Yeah.
that really is, and it's cool now that because they say you never have to work a day in your life when you enjoy it, and it's cool that you're able to put multiple things that you like doing all in one. Took the risk, and another thing you were talking about as well, and I'm glad you bring this up, because a
Yeah.
lot of people that I've talked to kind of have this situation where they have something in their life that is going really well, and for you it was work, it was
Yeah.
making a lot of money. You kind of mentioned it becoming part of your identity, and it also becomes something that kind of see, because you had something working in your life. See, me, when I got sober, I had burnt everything to the ground, which I thought was a bad thing at the time, but I look back now and it kind of made my life a little bit easier because I had to do something about it.
Yeah.
Whereas there's a lot of people like you that are very successful at something, and kind of functioning in some way. It must have been hard to quit knowing that you had an area of your life that was working pretty well. It must have been hard to say, look, I still have a problem, when people could be looking at you and saying, man, you're killing it. You're killing it
Yeah.
at work. Do you feel like it was harder to quit because you were doing well in certain areas of your life?
I think it prevented me from getting sober by like probably a couple of years. Once I had like the whole blow up in New Orleans, like I I just said fuck work. Like I quit, and in an insane way. Like I just told them like I have a health issue and I have to quit, and then like wouldn't respond to anything. Ultimately, I did tell them what had been going on, and they actually let me come back and work for them like 9 months later. Um, but they actually like fired my boss at the time, because they were like, "How could you not have known that he was going through this?" Which I feel bad for him, because I was so good at hiding it. Like I was putting makeup on before calls. Like I was doing everything I could do to like not look like I was using meth, which I was, even on Zoom calls. Like I would just mute my video, take a hit of the meth pipe, and then just keep going on with my day. Like I was fully committed to doing meth and working. Um,
Could
but
you
no,
imagine if
yeah,
you thought you had the video off, and
I
really it's
know.
like you in the video hitting the pipe?
Can you imagine? Yeah. No, I think I quadruple checked every time, and actually I would like put my head like underneath the table, so even if the video magically came back on, um, then it wouldn't matter. Yeah.
Oh man, that's great. And I was going to ask you too, it kind of a question I came up with as I was talking about or thinking about your company and stuff. How do you think sober travel is different from those that go out and are drinking or partying hard during their travel? Do you find a difference? What do you think about that?
I did that whole type of travel and like had a great time. Um, just drinking in different locations. Um, essentially was how I used to travel. And I think there's like there's a time and a place for it, maybe for people, not for me. But through starting this company, there was definitely an evolution in like what I felt like the benefit of the company was. At first, it was like, this is a sober travel company and like we're sober. Like that's the main selling point. But ultimately, once I thought about it more, it's like, well, why is it important for travel to be sober? Like, what does it give you beyond just maybe for people who need to be sober for like safety and, feeling comfortable? But what does the sobriety ultimately give maybe someone who isn't sober in their day to day life? And I think what it is the people and it's the connection, because I've traveled to amazing places, like close to 40 countries in the last like few years. But there's never been a place that was just amazing because it was an amazing place. Like my most important memories and the things that give me joy and things that I hold on to are those experiences married with the people I was with. So it could be the most amazing hike, but the people that I'm with suck, or maybe I'm just there alone. Like it might not be as memorable as maybe just kind of a mid-level hike with just like okay scenery, but like the people I'm with are amazing. And so I think when you remove substances and you remove that distraction or kind of that artificial connection that drinking can give people, there's maybe a more awkward entry to closeness, but it's deeper, it's real, and everyone kind of uniting under this idea that we're going to like remove this distraction layer and we're going to connect with the experience, but we're also going to connect with each other in the experience. Because when you have an experience that's memory is shared across other people that you're with, it becomes deeper because people remember certain pieces of it. Other people remember others, and like it just kind of lives in your group memory and becomes more special for everyone because of that. Um, Versus we all just got so drunk one night. Like those are great stories, but like, you know, kind of having a 5 day hike with people and no one's drinking, no one's hungover. We're all focusing on like getting to know each other, having an amazing time focusing on like the surroundings. And yeah, I think it's just a deeper connection.
Yeah, it's a really interesting way to put that. And when I think about certain situations in my life that I've enjoyed the most, whether it was a trip or anything that I've done, a lot of times it has been mainly about the people. And that's cool
Mhm.
to hear coming from someone who's been to 40 countries and stuff, what it really kind of comes down to and boils down to. And it's really the experience, the people you're with. I really like how you put that. I want to ask you, how do you maintain, because you've been sober for years now, how do you maintain the excitement? How do you maintain the wanting to continue this journey, wanting to continue to get another year sober? What do you think is key for you?
I think for me, like, there's a lot of things that reinforce my sobriety. Um, I travel somewhere new like every month or two. So I'm always having conversations with people about my sobriety story. And for me, that like helps me because it puts me back into, those previous mindsets. And I'm just like, whew, I'm glad I'm like where I am now. Um, so that really helps me maintain my sobriety. Also, just for me, like I've used that thrill seeking, kind of always wanting the next best thing mentality. And I've just shoved that into my lifestyle. So, like every month or two, I'm in a new country, I'm in a new city, I'm learning a new routine, I'm exploring, I'm getting that dopamine from just the newness, the freshness. Um, so I think this kind of nomadic lifestyle really works for me and the way that my brain is wired. Um, but people ask me a lot, like, could you ever see yourself going back to like drinking or doing drugs? And now my kind of response is like, do you ever see yourself going back to middle school? Like, no, like that was important to my formation as now an adult, but like, I don't want to go back to middle school. Like, why would I? That is like so far removed from who I am now. And I have such a better life now that I've reached the point where me being around people drinking or doing drugs, I'm just like, I'm so glad this is not me. Like there's nothing here for me because there's such a better life that I have now. Um, so yeah, that's what keeps me going. Just bouncing around, telling my story, checking in at the bar scene, and then being like, "Whew, still glad this isn't me." So maybe those are like the three pillars right now for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that too. And it kind of goes to the point of, and I've tried to kind of vocalize this to people that I've talked to that have been struggling in the past is kind of just convey the message of you're going to feel so much better eventually once you get sober. Once you
Mm-hmm.
get through whatever struggles you have initially, and it's going to become a lot less about not doing something and more just enjoying the new life. And
Yeah.
I'm right there with you. I think back to drinking and using now, and before where I was at in life, it was always an upgrade. It always made me feel better. It was more exciting. But I feel like now it would be a downgrade. You start
Yeah.
to you get a life that has a lot more purpose to you, whatever that is, and you kind of look back on that stuff. And like you said, as middle school, it's like I don't need to go there anymore. I used
Yeah.
to. There was a time when
Yeah.
I absolutely needed to go there just to feel okay. And it's like I don't now. I want to ask you, Ryan, what do you think is next for you? What are some goals, whether it's your company or just sobriety or traveling? What's your goal over the next year?
I mean, my goal of the next year is to like really fully focus on Capsule Adventures and making it something that I can do long term. Because I think for a lot of people, like for me, like travel was such a huge replacement for my previous, you know, drug and alcohol habits. So I think if I can use my company to show people that there can still be like joy and excitement in this world, like you're giving up drinking, you're not giving up being a full adult that can have exhilarating experiences. Like you don't sober doesn't mean boring. Essentially, it's like what I'm trying to get people to realize. Um, so I think just focusing on my company. I think where I am in my personal development, like I'm pretty happy with where I am right now. So I would love to take this year to like maybe not grow in any way, to just kind of enjoy where I am and focus on my business. I think sometimes we're always focused on like how can we improve that we never have a chance to sit with our improved self. So I'm gonna enjoy who I am now. I'm not going to give myself too many personal growth goals, and instead, I'm just going to give myself some business goals to get after.
Yeah, and I like that too because you're right. It's always like, what? How am I going to improve? How am I going to make
Yeah,
more? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do
yeah.
that? How am I
And
going to
that's kind of an
grow?
addictive behavior. Like I have to be better
Yeah,
and better and better and better and better.
but the point that you said, where it's like we're always improving, we don't get to really take some time to enjoy our improved self.
Hmm.
That's pretty powerful stuff right there. I've never actually stopped to think about that. I think what happened was I got sober and I had so much work to do. There were
Yeah,
so many things that
yeah.
needed
There's a
improvement.
backlog, probably. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. There was years
yeah,
of needing improvement, and then it finally started to happen. I've just kind of just continued since, but
yeah.
I think that's great, and I hope the next year goes great for you. I want something that I kind of asked. I know we're getting towards the end here. Something that I typically ask everyone is, what would your advice be to someone who's been out there struggling? They think that life is going to be absolutely boring without drugs and alcohol. They think their life's over. They keep replaying all the holidays and, I'm not going to be able to drink at weddings and I'm not going to go out on a Friday night and get wasted. What would your advice be to them and just kind of starting to think differently about what sobriety is going to be like?
Their life is going to be different and it might be boring at first. Like, I know for me, I was like, who even am I without drugs or alcohol? Like, what do I even like doing? Like, there was nothing in my life that did not involve me being drunk or high. So it took me a solid 9 to 12 months to actually relearn who I was as a person. Like, what did I like? What did I not like? there was new hobbies that I tried or things that I thought I liked that I set aside. And ultimately, you're going to have a lot more time. So you might be bored because you're not going to be spending days being hungover on the couch, mindlessly eating and half watching TV. Like, I would say being bored's amazing because it means you're not hungover. You're just kind of in a more healthy hungover state. Just your brain sometimes needs a break just to be bored and just to be sitting with your own thoughts. But it's really a relearning of who you are as a person. Like, you're no longer frozen in this state of who you were when you first started drinking. Like, you're now being reborn into this new person that has the options to like new things, try new things, um, decide you don't like new things, or set some people aside in your life, connect with new people. It's an exciting time, but there might be some boredom, and I think that's much better than the alternative, which is fake excitement followed by feeling like shit, followed by maybe harming your health, harming the people around you. So if you have to be a little bored to get there, I think it's a fair trade.
Yeah, and that's something I can relate to. I remember, man, I remember I trying to get sober for many years and just going, I am so bored. I just cannot. But the problem was I thought that feeling was going to last forever. And what I didn't realize was I wasn't even like necessarily feeling sobriety yet. I was feeling withdrawal. I was feeling deep depression. I was feeling coming down. I hadn't even given myself enough time to
Yeah.
start to feel better. So that's always my message to people too, is give yourself a break. Kind of like you said, give yourself a break. Let yourself
Yeah.
heal. A lot of us have
Yeah.
done a lot of damage, and even though things may feel boring in the beginning, you'll accept it and come to actually be grateful for it, because suddenly that boredom becomes way better than what it was like just wishing you could stop doing something and you just couldn't. So
Yeah.
Ryan, thanks, man. Thank you for taking the time. I will put all your socials. I will put your website on the episode details so people can find you. I'll put your email if you're cool with that. I'll
Yeah.
ask you one last question. What are you most grateful for today? You've got years of sobriety. You're an entrepreneur. You've been to 40 countries. You got this whole new life. You get to meet people all over the world that are starting their sobriety journey. What do you think you're most grateful for today when it comes to getting sober and turning your life around?
I'm most grateful for today. Well, I just got in a scooter accident like a couple weeks ago. My shoulder was like fully dislocated. I'm not wearing the sling right now, but most other hours of the day I am. And I think that's coming to my mind because I'm just so grateful for like being a healthy person that is no longer poisoning myself. Like, moving my body, being physically capable, going to the gym, like that is so important to my sobriety and just feeling like a human, that I think like I'm really just grateful for my health, and that I am now treating my body in a way that's much better than I used to be treating it. And all the doors being a fully mobile person has opened up in my life as far as like travel and just many other things.
Yeah, all good stuff, man. All good stuff. And you just said I have a life today, and
Yeah.
it's something that anyone that's been through addiction can be grateful for. That was the biggest thing for me that I started off with. Grateful I'm alive. And as time went on, there was more things that were added, but that was the only thing I could grasp onto as I was being sent to. I think it was like my 7th treatment center. Just got revived days before, and I was like,
Jeez.
I'm just grateful I'm alive. So thank you,
Yeah.
brother. Thank you for taking the time to come on. Anyone listening, go ahead and comment, share, like, subscribe. Let me know where you're at in your sobriety journey. I would love to hear from you guys. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate you, man.
All right. Thank you, man. Really appreciate your work. All right.